That tennis match Sunday.
Oh. Rafa.
The best in sports when a champion at the end is filled with desperation at the end of his run. I can't honestly believe that the Miami Dolphins could shit even on Tom Brady's last day. Like that they could lose to him by blowout even on the last day, that the only way that the Dolphins can ever supplant Tom Brady is in the news cycle by having the story for our times on the day that he's retiring at the start of Black History Month.
It was a loss, but they kind of won in that regard, where they got, it was no more Brady. It was all about the Dolphins and Brian Flores suing them.
Okay, yeah, but
it's not the kind of PR you want,
the Dolphins,
but they dominated the headlines.
Yeah, they won the day. Tom Brady's road record career, I think, is like 8-10 at Miami. Another L.
Put it on the poll, please, Jessica. Billy's running late today. Who won more yesterday?
Well, when you frame it
Who
like
won the day more yesterday?
There you go.
Who won the day in the news cycle more yesterday? Tom Brady or the Dolphins? Okay, there is a lot of uproarious stuff here. We should say on the front end, there's a lot of stuff here that's also heartbreaking.
Yes.
I honestly, in seeing the text exchange between Bill Belichick and Brian Flores, I thought a number of things. One of them, what Stugotz wouldn't pay for just a live stream of Bill Belichick's text messages.
Oh, my God.
But to see an insight into their relationship, which appeared to be a cold one, because if you're really friends with somebody, you don't call them Bill in text you're sending back with respect. Like that was, like Brian Flores was thrilled to hear from Bill Belichick.
Mm-hmm.
And the idea, Stugotz, that he thought to ask like the black guy in the movie who's about to die and everyone can see he can die because these things are too good to be true. The idea that in that text he sees Belichick saying, congratulations, and he realizes this is too good to be true, was too easy. He realizes the Kingmaker is calling me, and he's like, wait a minute, did you mean to text Dayball?
Are you sure, Bill?
That's crazy. That is the craziest story of yesterday, even on a day when I learned that Brian Flores was being bribed by his owner to lose games.
I think that's the craziest part of yesterday. Quite honestly, I should say, too, my conceit is that the NFL and the country, for that matter, are systemically racist. So yesterday didn't seem all that revelatory.
We live in a racist country.
The Rooney Rule and those interviews always felt like shams to us.
Yep.
And now we have further proof, air quotes, because really all we got was a gossipy.
Oh, no, we don't have proof. Wait a minute. No, we do not have
in
proof.
The public.
No,
like,
but alleging racism and being able to prove it in court, I did not see in a 57-page lawsuit. I did not see proof. Now, they may get proof, and I'd like to see the movement, and I'm rooting for the movement, and I hope it gets a lot of other stories behind it, because this is a whistleblower who's willing to throw away his career on this martyrdom. But it is in some ways a funny whistleblower, and not only because he's not going to be advocating for Honduran rights when there aren't enough Honduran coaches in the NFL. This is a coach who was indeed very mean and wasn't exactly on the right side of Kenny Stills playing music and being protesting at practice. He was very much Patriot way then.
Yeah, he was keep your criticisms of Stephen Ross and politics private, Kenny Stills, and now he's a civil rights icon. Perhaps in the same conversation as Colin Kaepernick?
The reason I don't know what's going to happen there is I really don't know whether yesterday was a big noise of the moment or one of these Curt Flood things where a guy just said, I'm going to go on the principle, I'm going to go martyrdom. There's still jobs available. I'm going to make myself unemployable. This is the hill I'm going to die on. And furthermore, I really don't think he's going to settle. Like, maybe I'm wrong, but I don't think this is a money play.
No, it's not. He's trying to make a point. He's trying to instigate change. He is. He's trying to point out what's going on in the NFL in a way that we can all see it. Not just talk about it, not just imagine it, in a way we can all see it. I think that's where he's headed.
I mean, the last time the NFL was sued for this, they did settle with Colin Kaepernick. So I would wait and see. I'm with Dan. I use proof in air quotes because if you turn to social media, they think a screen cap of a gossipy Bill Belichick is all the proof that they need. Look, we all knew this about the NFL. The NFL has navigated this quite swimmingly. The sport seemingly is bigger than it's ever been in this country.
They haven't navigated it swimmingly. They have continued to do record numbers, and they are the content king, and they are the most giant entertainment thing we've ever had in this country. And I'm not even sure that bad public relations are bad public relations, because now they're in the conversation for 2 weeks headed up to the big game. Everyone will be talking about this, and they don't necessarily have to do anything about it yet until, Mike, you get a movement behind somebody who has the courage to do what Brian Flores just did. There are not many who throw away. That guy's been trying to coach for his entire life. He got the opportunity through the Belichick tree, and he succeeded more than most because Belichick has sprinkled success everywhere, even though he doesn't know how to use technology because he's older than Greg Cody.
Yeah. Well, what I actually think might happen here, and Charles Robinson alluded to it, is like, okay, you don't think a gossipy Bill Belichick text message is proof? Well, I've got proof. And this may open the door. We saw with the Me Too movement how one person's bravery led to two people's bravery, and then it became this sweeping movement.
You might get a class action lawsuit that feels like the concussion settlement and isn't what they just did with Cully in Houston, where they gave him $22 million of reparations with, look, we know you're a career lifer of 66-year-old who has never had a coordinator job and has never been somebody who has been in charge, but please clean up this mess for a year. We'll give you a 3-year contract and you'll get all $22 million. You can get something here where so many coaches join because this stuff has been so obvious for so long that the royal family of football, the Pittsburgh Steelers, had to install a rule that no one pays any attention to because this has been a problem for long before now. I'm with Mike, though, on the idea that I think yesterday's bigger story, I mean, I know which one makes the noise, but the bigger story that an owner, that's the stuff out of Major League, the movie Major League, that an owner is trying to bribe his coach to lose games, and he's cheap about it.
He was trying to get Joe Burrow, though. I mean,
well, yeah, I do kind of laugh that in part Stephen Ross made lose this team. At least that's what people are saying, because he wanted Tom Brady and Joe Burrow.
Yeah,
I said swimmingly because the NFL has dealt with people like you and other talking heads calling it systemically racist for years. The NFL dealt with a lawsuit from Colin Kaepernick alleging racism and settled it, and is still putting up record numbers. What the NFL hasn't really dealt with is proof of tanking. It's a concept. We kind of see it on the television when we see like practice squad quarterbacks starting games, but paying allegedly $100,000.
Trying to. It was rejected, though.
Trying to, right.
Well,
because he's a principled man.
Yeah.
He is.
Yeah.
Yes.
No, the guy that is actively, according to leaked reports, tampering with Deshaun Watson to this day, didn't want to be on a yacht near a former player. Some of this stuff asks you to suspend a lot of disbelief, but you welcome gambling into the game, Stugotz. And if you have an owner offering cash rewards for losing
it's crazy.
games,
It's
you
crazy.
throw the integrity of the game in the trash.
Right.
Whitty has been cutting up CBS Sound because Brian Flores is making the rounds, and we will have the partner from the law firm representing Brian Flores later in the show.
Are some Dolphin fans, I say some Dolphin fans going to be upset with Brian Flores and applaud Stephen Ross because Ross was willing to lose to get Joe Burrow?
And was trying to get Tom Brady. And by the way, we would not have had yesterday feel like yesterday if Brady had been with the Dolphins. The end of his career would have been sad and awful. I can't believe that the most surprising thing about all of that was that Brady would take a meeting with any of these people.
Michigan guy, though.
And I don't know. I don't know. Tom Brady was terrific over the last 2 years. And a lot of people pointed out to me, I got into a lot of debates on social media. It's like, why would Brian Flores accept this plan of tanking when, because he's a black head coach, his record will just be held against him? Like, it's impossible to know exactly what this team would look like if they had, say, Joe Burrow. But I have very recent evidence to suggest Miami Dolphins might have been a Joe Burrow away because he's in the Super Bowl right now.
Well,
Yep.
one of the greatest talents that they've swallowed the last 20 years. Parcells and Saban failed here. Losers.
Mm-hmm.
The
Every coach has been a loser here.
Okay,
I mean,
but I'm just saying that's, in terms of regard, they can swallow anybody. This organization over the last 20 years, much of it owned by Stephen Ross, who hasn't paid taxes on anything in this country in a really long time. Stephen Ross has run this organization, once the winningest in sports, right into the ground. Don Shula recently passed away, and Stephen Ross has used all the collateral. He has buried this team in shame. It is only relevant when he is doing big, dumb things like assigning a task force because they've got a bullying scandal, and I still haven't gotten the first report from the task force.
Mike, they were 10-6 a season ago. You don't think if they have Tom Brady, perhaps they're in the AFC Championship game?
The last two Dolphins teams very much needed an upgrade at quarterback, and if they had Tom Brady or Joe Burrow, they're at the very least a playoff team.
We will get to that, though, Mike, because I can't be surprised at all that Stugotz wants to
do
turn
the sports radio thing?
today into
imagine that.
Brady retired yesterday, and he still wants to do the hypotheticals.
I mean, there's finally an owner who's doing what I've asked an owner to do: tank a season. I mean,
trying. He was
4 games against the Patriots.
Allegedly.
He was unsuccessful in trying allegedly to do it because his coach wouldn't take what I believe to be bribes that are very cheap for what he was asking.
Too much time has gone without me making once again the conceit that the NFL and the country is systemically racist. So let me say that. Stephen Ross invested in Action Network in 2019. The NFL has formal partnerships with DraftKings and all sorts of gambling apps and is taking all sorts of gambling dollars. And we saw this over the course of the year where they would just sweep bad officiating under the rug and think we're operating in the world where gambling is once again in the shadows, sort of like tough shit, something kind of screwy happened. Now you have an owner allegedly offering $100,000 cash rewards for losing. That is a Pete Rose level scandal.
Flabbergasting and amazing to me that it gets drowned out today by the other stuff, even though I understand it. We all understand it. The big noise of the moment is, wait a minute, successful coach is now suing and starting a sports historic leadership march toward making this an echoing thing that isn't just loud noise of the moment. Hey, George Floyd died, and the machine is trying to get back to where it was, where all the guys being hired are white dudes, and Dayball's the next genius, and Belichick's had so many riches that he can't even tell apart the Bryants on his phone, even though they're very different human beings.
That could happen to anyone, Dan.
It really could. It really could. It has happened to Stugotz.
It did happen to me. I was texting. I meant to text Abby. She told me to get a foot massage, and I finally went to get one in New York City, and I texted her what was supposed to be for her, hey, you were right. Foot massage, better than sex. I sent it to Alden Smith.
I sent Chris Cody last night my thoughts on the Colombia World Cup qualifying match.
Oh.
I meant to send it to my family.
It happens.
You didn't send them to me?
Do you want my thoughts on Colombia's
What
World
are
Cup
those?
qualifying?
Share with all of us if you
It's
will.
gone awry.
Oh.
They've not scored a goal in like 8 games.
It's too bad.
In 8th grade, I texted a girl and I said that she was the spawn of Satan, and I accidentally sent it to her.
She was texting in 8th grade.
Haven't made that mistake since.
Whittingham, what were your thoughts about the Dolphins? And you've heard the sound. I have not heard the sound from Flores yet. A freedom fighter that I'm not certain. This has to have been in play before he was so publicly smeared. But the Dolphins smearing him this way must have hurt so much, must have been so personal to see himself dragged like that over the last 2 weeks, that if he had any doubt about a lawsuit, he's rushing to it really early. He could have waited for 3 more jobs. He's taking his opening now because he and his attorneys know they can use the big noise, know they could use it right before the Super Bowl.
Absolutely.
Did it on Brady's big day, right after the conference championships games. This kind of stuff, you don't end up on CBS This Morning without some planning involved. It's not like it just happened from one moment to the next. But when we have the attorney on, I'd be super curious to know how hurt his client is. Because if he wasn't angry black man before that smear campaign, I bet you sure as shit was after that smear campaign, because that had to sting to see the organization drag you like that publicly and not be able to retort.
To me, the thing that I took away from listening to the interview was that it might not have been the smear campaign. I really think it's what happened with the Giants.
Same.
And the fact
Yes.
that he got a text from Bill Belichick saying, "Congrats on the job," realized it wasn't him, and he's walking into a sham interview. And for a guy who has achieved what he has achieved, as turning around a terrible franchise where the owner was allegedly paying to try and get him to lose games, to then turning them into a winning team for 2 straight seasons, he's done a job that merits him being hired somewhere else. And then to basically realize that you're walking into an interview that you are not going to participate in. I heard your conversation yesterday with Howard Bryan where he's talking about other such candidates like Willie Randolph in baseball who have done that. That it's humiliating.
It
and
is.
I think those are the moments where Brian Flores goes, we have to do something about this.
Can you just imagine whether it's angry or hurt? I just want you to be Brian Flores for a moment. I don't mean to do the Matthew McConaughey scene where I'm asking you
Should I close my eyes?
to imagine that he's white, but I just want you to imagine the hurt on Brian Flores when the champion and mentor that he respects so much that he's still like texting him, "Thanks, Bill," by name and using his name in the text because he wants to clearly be respectful. And he was you can almost see the thrill of Bill Belichick knows something I don't. He knows the Giants' job is mine. That's a great job. Thank you, Bill, my mentor. And then he realizes it's heartbreaking. It's heartbreaking. And then it becomes hysterical because Belichick just has to figure out on his phone how to leave dots there until all this is solved itself. Like once he's made that mistake, he copped to it immediately, but he needs to not ever answer that text.
But Chris is right. That exchange started days before they announced Brian Dable as coach.
Well,
and Flores went in for another interview, and Belichick's already telling him you're not getting the job.
But this is where Flores has torched, I'm guessing, maybe the relationship with Belichick and torched the relationships throughout the league because he's putting out there for everyone to see not just buffoonery from champion Bill Belichick, Patriot way, everything stays in-house and private, but the hurt is so profound that it's coming from the guy who gave him his job.
Yes.
It's so profound that he's just like, oh, never mind, let me get my lawyers. I need to get my lawyers because now what's going to happen is Bill Belichick's going to get deposed. Like Bill Belichick is going to have to talk about things in front of people that he doesn't want to talk about. And Brian Flores just did that to him and did it to him because he's the victim of what the system and what Belichick, the hurt that morphed into.
And in the interview, the attorney says that they contacted CBS about doing this last week, that this has been in the works. So it seems very much like that text exchange happened and Brian Flores is like, all right, I'm doing something about this straight away. And then there is the gathering of the evidence and the writing of this 58-page lawsuit that includes all these incredible accusations.
They're incredible accusations. I know a lot of people are looking at it and saying right now, well, this is not proof. This is not proof of racism. It's the spark that starts the fuse is one. B, this is just what they've gathered in the last couple of weeks to throw together some paperwork that they could get out there before the Super Bowl to get this maximum attention. That they will now go through discovery and some of the things. They will go and start gathering proof, and they will have the momentum of a media.
And gathering coaches, probably.
They will have the momentum of a media and a climate where this can morph into power if enough people are assembled. This can become a movement if enough people have had their dignity hurt that way and have the receipts on it, can prove that this is a class action suit that will make the NFL want to go away like the concussion settlements. Stugotz, just $725 million, please take that. Reparations. Can we get on with our league now?
The amazing thing to me is that Brian Flores, it would appear, was gathering evidence or kind of writing these things down over the course of the last 3 years so that when this, or if this happened, he had this. But to me, the thing that most stands out about this lawsuit is it's the quiet part out loud. All of it, right? From the sham interviews to the tanking in a real way, which I wasn't terribly surprised by, just because if you go back and look at that season, like they signaled with their roster, with the amount of dead money they had, the amount of active money they had on the field, with the players they're throwing out there, they're not trying to win. And they
won anyway.
Right. Well, they won 5 games, which is more than anyone expected. But it's the logical next step.
Too many games to get
for the
Burrow.
owner to then say, "Well, do you mind not beating Cleveland on the road? That'd be great."
I mean,
It's not that you don't mind. Can you mind? It's the $100,000. If
Yeah.
the answer was no, and then money got thrown in.
I gotta feel like that's easy to prove, and I don't think that there's really anything to this without the Giants component to all of this. And I think that text string is going to be very difficult to prove in a court of law that it was anything more than just Bill Belichick gossiping with a couple of Giants friends. It's
but
all
but
fantastic.
he will depose. He'll be deposed, and
Well,
he'll have to answer how he
he
knew
may.
to congratulate.
He may be deposed unless Bill Belichick applies pressure of his own. We'll find out how much power.
Yeah,
he
but
has
Mike,
to
it's
make
how'd you
sure that
know, when
this
you-
goes away.
It's how'd you know. It's when you know. It's why did the Giants ask Brian Flores to come back in for a sham interview? I mean, that's the stuff.
Yeah, I think that that's really the story. Like the Dolphin stuff in particular is still he said. And a lot of people, including myself, did the thing where we saw all those leaks, the alleged smear campaign, and we're like, well, that's coming from Ross. Did some poking around. No, it didn't all come from Ross. It flatly didn't. Brian Flores, if you read those reports, it's actually very easy to deduce where a lot of these leaks came from. Brian Flores was allegedly mean to his staff and didn't talk to his staff for weeks. You think that's coming from Ross, or do you think that's coming from Brian Flores' staff? Brian Flores didn't actually rebut any of the things in those leaks. He can be both things.
That's the thing. He doesn't have to be a pure freedom fighter. These things are always imperfect, right? The martyrs are rarely the perfect messengers. It just doesn't happen that way. We can turn these people into symbols and argue over the sides on just about anything. But Brian Flores is a pretty good martyr, coming from the Belichick tree, having had success and looking around, being hurt and angry, because he feels like he can prove that what he just endured was racist. Maybe he can, maybe he can't. The fact that he's doing it, willing to do it, make the loud noise, be the martyr. You can yell and scream, he's doing it for money. It's not principle. He's not a good freedom fighter. He was wrong side of Kenny Stills. Doesn't matter. He is now at the forefront of having made a choice that is principled. You can attack it from any side you want to attack it. The choice is a principled one. He was hurt. He was angry. I'm imagining, we'll hear him in his own voice here, by everything that's happened that's been embarrassing the last few weeks. A man who got success from an owner who was paying him to lose and overachieve there. And then allegedly, and then his record, everyone's holding that up now, 24-25, impacted by that first year, which he made them 5-11. They didn't have any right to be 5-11. The next 2 years, they overachieve but don't make the playoffs in a league where everybody makes the playoffs and everything's been fast forwarded. You got to do it in 3 years or get out of here.
If they had Burrow, they'd be in the playoffs.
Or Brady.
Yeah, Super Bowl.
But you're talking about Brian Flores as an individual and how he might be a flawed person to bring this case forward. But it's also worth pointing out that he is attempting to start a class action lawsuit. He is attempting to gather other former NFL head coaches, other coaches who have attempted to interview for head coaching positions, and have several people. So it's not just about the character or the background of one person. It's about a group of people who have had racism against them. And so the idea that, it's about what Brian Flores is specifically, he's trying to gather other people. Now, it'd be curious to see if other people are going to kind of light their careers on fire in order to join them.
I don't need the result, though, to tell you that what he's done is already historically brave. I don't need, go ahead, you'll go to court, you'll do everything else, you'll argue about all the details, what he said, what he meant, what his motives are. What I'm telling you is that this is a historically echoing sound for me, no matter where the result ends up, because there's plenty in the system to make the result go away, Stugotz. There's plenty of money. The machine he's going up against He's got an army of Jim Caldwells or Lovie Smiths. We don't know the stories they got, but right now they're all being brought together.
Yeah, does this open the portal to Jim Caldwell being like, well,
Of
you want
course it
stories?
does. No, of course it opens the portal to that.
But I applaud, and we should all applaud, and I think everyone is, or most people are, applaud Brian Flores for doing this because, Dan, he's like Jim Caldwell would not take certain interviews because he was like, hey, it's a token interview. I'm not doing it. It's embarrassing, so I'm not going to do it. And Brian Flores just went through what so many black head coaches have gone through before, and rather than just let it go by, he's saying, no, stop right here. I'm going to shine some light on it.
Well, it's not just shining some light. He's torched his career in the name of the principle. It's not just shining the light.
I know.
And it's not all pretty, right? Some of this stuff feels gratuitous. John Elway showed up hungover to my meeting and therefore didn't take me seriously. What is really the merit of this? This is hearsay. This is you thinking he looks hungover, but he's going to continue dragging people into this. It's a class action lawsuit. I imagine a lot of people have stories similar to this guy acted in an embarrassing fashion. I'm going to air all that dirty laundry. And regardless of whether or not I can prove racism, you're not going to like this look that goes out there.
I was kind of laughing at the Broncos' response. Meeting started 7:30 a.m. sharp.
The spectrum, though, the spectrum on all of it is amazing. Like drunk John Elway combined with this league enduring lawsuits on the spectrum from Flores and the bigot John Gruden in the same season.
Man.
They can't figure out which side they're on. They're just stencil end racism in the end zone and maybe that'll make it go away. Like it's just they're being assaulted by
the Super Bowl.
by black people, Hondurans, and the bigoted Klan from every side. They're being sued.
The job went to Vic Fangio, a white man.
Thanks.
Here's Brian Flores in his own words on CBS Mornings discussing potentially sacrificing his career.
I let both the teams know that, we're gonna file, but look, I love coaching. I'm gifted to coach. I know that. And the relationships I've built with players, coaches, support staff, I'm gifted to coach, and I love coaching, and I want to coach. But this is bigger than coaching. Of course. This is much bigger than coaching.
He goes on to make comparisons to the NFL being run like a plantation.
I think we didn't have to file a lawsuit for the world to know that there's a problem from a hiring standpoint in regards to minority coaches in the National Football League. The numbers speak for themselves. Right. We filed the lawsuit so that we could create some change, and that's important to me. I think we're at a fork in the road right now. We're either going to keep it the way it is, or we're going to go in another direction and actually make some real change where we're actually changing the hearts and minds of those who make decisions to hire head coaches, executives, etc.
Courtesy CBS.
If you go back through the history of this, because I didn't hear plantation, that's a loaded word, and it'll get people to start a fight and not hear anything after that. And they don't care.
It's in the lawsuit.
They don't care that James Baldwin said a highly compensated slave is still a slave. Like, they don't want to hear it. The plantation is one that is going to stop the conversation before it starts. But allow me to explain for a second what's happening there, no matter how much money these people are making working on, quote unquote, this plantation. If you want to think about systemic racism in this country and all the strides that black people had to make with this country being free labor, being the coal furnace this country's commerce was built on, the free labor of slavery, all the climbing that has had to be done after that has been granted reluctantly by white power, the climbing of those people into powerful spaces. It has been white power in charge for a long time, and white power protects white power. This is not me saying that this is a country filled with Klansmen. It's just telling you that white power tends to hire, just make it anywhere you want to make it, tends to hire people who look like them, think like them, similar sensibilities. And when you look at the entire commerce of the NFL, the way the whole thing ends up working, there's only so powerful the black player or coach can be, because, Stugotz, the way the structure is set up in a conservative league that blackballs Colin Kaepernick, all the power at the top is white, and you guys want Goodell to do something, and he works for them. So what? He can't even topple Daniel Snyder, who's an embarrassment to all the others. All the other white guys in that club are protected by the guy they pay $32 million a year to just be a janitor for them. He is a $32 million janitor that absorbs everything. He does not have any ownership over them. They have the ownership over him. He works for them. And all the power at the very top, Stugotz, gets Colin Kaepernick out of the league, and then from one day to the next, Patrick Mahomes, black player, labor, highly compensated, labor, says something, truth to power. The next day, they send out their janitor, and Goodell's like, we were wrong, never mind, we were wrong, sorry, we were wrong. The next day. That's not the owner saying they're wrong. Jerry Jones is still dancing around out there with the flag. Jerry Jones, who had to be held back from drafting Johnny Manziel on draft day, like dragged by the arm, because the people in charge of this, as you're noticing with Stephen Ross, not actually as smart as you think they are. Some of them are kind of baboons who haven't paid taxes for 15 years and got really rich, and you think they're smart because they're rich, and all they are is really rich.
This is from the complaint. It says, in certain critical ways, the NFL is racially segregated and is managed much like a plantation. Its 32 owners, none of whom are black, profit substantially from the labor of NFL players, 70% of whom are black. The owners watch the games from atop NFL stadiums in their luxury boxes, while their majority black workforce puts their bodies on the line every Sunday, taking vicious hits and suffering debilitating injuries to their bodies and their brains, while the NFL, and their owners reap billions of dollars. It's a fine.
You okay?
Yeah. I mean, we kind of always said this, right? We kind of always knew it while watching it.
No, but it's different. Hold on a second. It's different saying it and all of a sudden getting power, movement, and lawyers behind. The argument we're taking to court is that this is all a plantation. We're taking the argument to court that it's the same. It's Stugotz. As soon as the players in college football started asking for the money and the power, Stugotz, the entire system ended up changing. As soon as all the people up top went and grabbed at the money in college football. Now the players are grabbing for the power, the coaches are grabbing for the power. And what do you think the people at the top of that are going to do? They're going to use Roger Goodell to make sure that nobody gets near the power. They control the club. Who gets in it? Michael Jordan has gotten as high as any of them. You think he's got power? Because the power is to hire people and make sure that you're spreading the league with the Belichick seed that's all over the place. Make sure you're hiring so many people that some of them are going to have success. Pull them up. But Michael Jordan is one of how many? And he's dealing. He's one. But his peer is Donald Sterling.
Right.
Look at what it takes for Michael Jordan to get there, and look at what Donald Sterling, slumlord, clown, racist. They're of equal power, but there can be 30 Sterlings and one Jordan. Shad Khan, right? Is he the only minority owner, or is there another minority owner in the NFL?
Kim Pagula owns part of the Buffalo Bills. She's Asian American.
Yeah. And they're not all white guys. Benson family.
But none of them are black.
No, I understand.
70% of the players are black.
That's why they said 0 black owners. I know that there's conversation about the Denver franchise possibly being the first one to open that what seems like a forbidden door, and there's not equal representation for the people on the field to that point. There's no one in the most powerful positions that reflects what the league truly is.
Isn't it insane that I couldn't have seen this coming in terms of a class action lawsuit, but it did seem like this issue was coming to a head when we began the coaching cycle with one active NFL head coach that was black, and that's Mike Tomlin. And that none of the teams that have hired coaches since did, even for the sake of optics, not even because they're hiring good coaches, didn't hire black men, and for the most part have picked white offensive geniuses, because black guys rarely get to be the offensive genius. It's only Byron Leftwich in this cycle that's going to get anywhere near that label. It's all the white guys who get to be, to Chris Cody's point, the white guys with the glasses that are the ones that are being hired right now. It's insane.
Why is this surprising to you?
Because the NFL, as Dan has pointed out many times, times as end racism in their end zone. We know that this issue, you begin the coaching cycle with one active black NFL head coach, and nobody wanted to remedy that problem.
And the only one is the guy who's never had a losing season is the other thing. And Stugotz, it's not, this is how it happens. It's how it's happened for a long time. Every club sort of wants to do it, believes in the idea of it sort of, as long as somebody else is the one doing it, as long as somebody else is the one leading on this. The optics of this, Stugotz, just...
Dan, I know it's terrible, but it's been the optics forever in the NFL, and
right.
Brian Flores is saying no more.
Okay,
I'm trying to change it.
But what I would say to you, though...
Like, that shouldn't be surprising that a bunch of teams needed a head coach, and they none of them hired a black head coach.
You are allowed...
At this stage of the NFL in 2022, we're surprised by that, and Flores is saying, no, I want to change it, and I'm going to change it now.
You're allowed to be totally unsurprised because you know everything that's coming as somebody hires, lawyers to do a lawsuit.
They have a track record in the NFL.
I know, but you're allowed to be unsurprised by it. I'm imploring you to not be so unsurprised by it that you're numb to it. That you argue on behalf of, well, this isn't surprising, it's just the way it is.
No.
And you don't put any flame behind the voice, Stugotz, of if you're not going to be surprised and shocked by this, then be hurt or angry, and also laugh at the buffoonery of the incompetence of the billionaires in it. Because the pandemic has sped up everything. Everything. Billionaires are wealthier than they've ever been. The wealth gap is larger than it has ever been. And one of the things that it sped up is, oh, look, after George Floyd, they're going to go right back to the way it was. One coach, maybe somebody else gets hired, but the machine is going to get right back to where it was, and it's going to take a lawsuit by one guy who's clearly qualified enough to do at least not sham interviews, and that's what's required to move the needle as the machine tries to get back into the space that it was before George Floyd.
But saying I'm not hurt by it or angered by it or other fans aren't hurt or angered by it, that's not fair, Dan.
I'm not saying that to you, buddy. I'm saying the moment you give voice to being unsurprised by this, you're a little bit number to it. It should still be
Dan.
surprising to you that a coach is being bribed $100,000 by his owner, and that owner might not be somebody who's quite as enlightened as you would like him to be when making these kinds of hires.
But I'm just saying they were all numb to it. I'm sorry, because if Brian Flores didn't do what he did, this whole cycle would have went by. They would have hired any black coaches, and we all would have made the joke about the Rooney Rule. And Brian Flores said, no, not joking anymore. What can I do? What can you do? What can Mike do? What can Chris do? We can't do anything. He can do something.
No, but salute the bravery in it, because what's going to happen?
I am.
But Stugotz, what's going to happen at these microphones is this man's going to get torn apart. He's going to get torn up. You think there was a smear campaign before? Wait till he becomes a symbol for what? Plantation. What? You say you're arguing in court that these millions of dollars that these people make is a plantation? When he becomes a symbol for that, do you know what he's welcoming into his life in this America? Don't be unsurprised by it because it makes you numb to it. Like, I'm not saying you, I'm saying all of you. Don't keep being surprised by it because it's hugely offensive. Even if this isn't the perfect case, okay? Even if this isn't just he can prove racism and we're going to look at him like we look at Martin Luther King in 2022. Not back then. If he's perfect, even if he's perfect, people are going to argue about this. Notice the bravery of the moment, because the man just set fire to his career, and he did it with jobs open, and he did it on principle, and he also took out possibly, or threatened, I imagine, a relationship with Bill Belichick, his mentor. None of this can be easy for him. What he is doing is brave, even if you argue on your side of it, this isn't racist, that isn't racist, I don't believe that there's racism here.
This is about forcing the issue, because I actually genuinely believe the NFL knows it has a problem, and the NFL is doing a lot to try to address that problem. While there's only one black head coach, two minority head coaches with Ron Rivera in Washington, we did just see a GM cycle where two black GMs were hired. We saw the Cleveland Browns receive a third-round draft pick because a minority was hired away from their franchise to run the Minnesota Vikings. There have to be people within those league offices that are dedicating their professional lives to eradicating this and instituting rewards like hey, hire more minority
It's hard to
candidates.
do, though.
And you could get something like a 3rd-round draft pick.
Which
and
is sad in and of itself. The fact that you
Right.
have
Correct.
to offer 3rd-round draft
Right.
picks.
Little
But
bribes.
it is-
Little bribes.
But it is progress.
Little bribes. Please don't be racist.
But ultimately,
Burrow.
all that work and all these 3rd-round picks and all these black GMs getting hired, all of it still gets undone because you can't tell one owner of 32 franchises who to hire. Because ultimately, they'll come away with the candidate they feel fits best. And there could be loads of reasons for that, potentially even some racist ones.
Some not racist. Many not racist.
I would even venture to say most of the time it's not racist. Okay? At least I'd like to believe.
Grant them that.
I'd like to believe most of the time it's not racist.
90% of the time, let's argue on behalf of the utopian society where it's not racist.
But
Brian Flores is coming for the 10% where it is.
I envision a room at
He's
owners'
coming for the
meetings.
Giants.
I envision a room at owners' meetings of everyone nodding along, acknowledging, yes, there is a problem. Someone needs to do something about this. You do it.
It's just I really believe that the systemic issue here is that every team now wants a partner for their quarterback, or the guy who's going to develop their quarterback, or the offensive genius. And I really believe that is so rarely viewed within the NFL as the black guy. The black guy who has risen in coaching is most often on the defensive side of the football.
Even when it's Bieniemy and it's the Chiefs. Even when it's the coordinator
job,
for
right?
an innovative.
Even when it's not even an offensive guy. Oh, you breathe the same air as Sean McVay. We'll position you as an offensive genius, Brandon Staley, even though you're a defensive guy.
And so all of these guys that are being hired right now is Brian Daboll. Can you turn Daniel Jones into Josh Allen? No. Nathaniel Hackett. Can you fix the Broncos quarterbacking situation?
As incidentally, in college sports where these Stugotz, these coaches are going to start populating all of these jobs in college football too, when everyone realizes you could pay the coordinators $1 million and $2 million, especially if Lincoln Riley can, as he has, just took Oklahoma's quarterback. He took Lincoln Riley. That I don't know if that was a package deal that was set up before that, but it ends up being USC didn't just get Oklahoma's coach, they got Oklahoma's quarterback. So all this professionalism is now coming to the college sports as well. All this money is going to flood in all over the place in leadership. And who do you think's going to grab it? It's going to be a whole lot of white people.
Well, it's all the guys who are known for having offensive systems, right? Chip Kelly, Mike Shanahan, Sean McVay. All of these guys are white. And we were trying to come up with names back here. It's Byron Leftwich and it's Eric Bieniemy. Those are the two black offensive guys who are kind of being thrown around in this cycle. Everyone wants a guy for their quarterback, and teams do not trust that black people can do that job, it would appear.
Since Al Campanis was on Nightline and gave voice to it, Dodgers general manager, team of Jackie Robinson, blacks don't have the necessities to do the job that I do. Since back then, we've been talking about this, and that's been the team of Jackie Robinson. The general manager got fired 2 days later because he said it out loud. They don't have the necessities. We need the black bodies. We need the white minds. The black bodies need to be led. Like, that's what's going to court. He's going into court with plantation, and it's going to start a whole lot of fights. And Stugotz, I don't want to be unfair to you, so forgive me, because when I say don't be unsurprised by this, it's because the details of this out in the light require disinfectant. Even if you can argue about every morsel of was he right or was he not right, he just torched something he cares about greatly in the name of I was hurt and angry enough by what just happened to me that it fell a hell of a lot like racism I can prove.
And I'm going to prove it.
But racism I can prove in court, I don't know if he's going to prove it, Stugotz.
I'm going to try to prove it.
I'm just telling you that it doesn't matter to me if he does prove it or not. He's made the statement today that will stay with me no matter what happens from here. I'm not going to play the result on this one. He's telling you I want to be the leader on I just felt racism and I think I could prove it in court.
And the class action nature of this lawsuit is he actually doesn't have to prove it, but someone else can. And someone else may step forward. And I got to believe because of American history. Someone else has a lot out there to further this argument.
I mean, the arguments are anecdotal. I've heard them, right? That Leslie Frazier was asked in an interview on a questionnaire if he was willing to work on Sundays. Like, I don't know if that's proof of anything, but I'm eager for the disclosure of what all these guys are going to tell now that Brian Flores has given them the courage. Stugotz, so many of these guys are going to have the opportunity to stand behind a pioneer and a leader on this, whether you like the messenger or not.
I check no on working on Sundays.
I know it was a stunner to get you in here last week, but this is happening. When you say, Mike, the diversity, that they might be committed to diversity, I don't actually want to just say bullshit to that, even though the results of that suggest bullshit. I do believe that they're doing all sorts of things trying, but this is how hard it is to move the machine, and we're all learning about some of this. Like the new Jackass movie has a whole lot of minorities in it, and you can't help but notice, oh, wait a minute, those were all white dudes, and I thought the doing dumb shit to injure yourself was the exclusive domain of white dudes, but no, they got to diversify that, and they've got to do something in 2022 that shows me, holy shit, Jackass was white, and I didn't even realize it.
Did you watch the Jackass movie? Because that would be like the most surprising thing of today.
With no sound?
I have seen trailers with no sound. Isn't Johnny Knoxville coming on with us?
He was supposed to, Dan. He had to cancel.
Oh, boy.
And a big Royal Rumble.
Yeah.
Did you also laugh at the Jackass trailer where all these people were throwing caution to the wind and doing all sorts of reckless stunts whilst wearing surgical masks?
What else was funny about this lawsuit? Billy, yeah, I haven't heard from you. And Roy, you've been editing the whole time, and that's a blind spot for the show because it's not that I'm guessing it's not that he doesn't have anything to say, but he has been editing the entire time. Billy, Roy, this is your local team. We rarely have a local story of the size that it knocks Tom Brady out of a news cycle. So what do you got? What were your observations here?
From the first day of the firing, I knew something was up, and now there's proof. And he clearly has, like Mike said, this is going to be a class action lawsuit. He doesn't even have to prove it. Like, there's going to be people coming forward with proof that the NFL is being run by a plantation, like a plantation. Like, their hiring practices need to change, and I'm really looking forward to seeing what's going to happen. Like, I'm excited, actually.
The discovery on this, I think we're going to get discovery here that I was hoping for in the Gruden lawsuit, Stugotz, that I don't think we're going to get in the Gruden lawsuit. Billy, what were you amused? Was there anything amusing that you saw in the Dolphins' incompetence?
What about this would have been amusing, Dan? What part would you have been laughing at yesterday?
The Dolphins' incompetence.
Oh, yeah.
Well, I mean, I think some of the bigger accusations aren't race related and are going to have big ramifications too. Like if you're playing or you're trying to pay someone to lose on purpose, like that's not a racial thing. You're just trying to pay a coach to lose. If you're trying to pay or you're trying to get him to collude with an active player from another team, like that's not race related, and that's going to have big ramifications too.
But I just want the funny of a Dolphin owner
Just to laugh at racism,
failing to successfully bribe his coach. And I don't want you to laugh at racism, but I do want you to laugh at the idea of how would you have handled realizing on your phone as Brian Flores is texting you back that you've texted the wrong Brian. You don't think there's funny there?
They haven't spoken since. He went on CNN today, and he said that he didn't tell Bill Belichick that he was including that in the lawsuit, pictures of that, and he hasn't spoken to him since.
I'm asking you.
I think he stopped caring there.
I'm asking
Brian Flores.
I'm asking Billy Gill the question of you've made the mistake. You're Bill Belichick. You have confused Brian Daboll and Brian Flores. You have texted Brian Flores, congratulations, when you meant to text Brian Daboll, and he realizes that this is all too easy. I've gotten this job too easy, and my mentor is texting me, this is all too easy. I can't believe that he knew to ask that question. It's stunning to me.
Well, it was days later. He probably saw the news that he wasn't getting the job. He's like, is it a wrong Brian situation?
And also, like, he hasn't talked to the Giants yet.
By the way,
And so he's like, wait a second, what? I'm getting the job. I haven't even talked to them yet.
I was that good with the Dolphins?
They all have agents that like blabber to one another also. And this entire segment is just Dan trying to get us to stencil laugh at racism in the end zone of our show.
this whole mixing up of the first name things happens all the time. I've been getting tagged in local Miami politics stuff all the time now because people think that I'm Billy Corbin or that I'm the one that's angry yelling at clouds. So the wrong Billy, the wrong Brian thing, I could see it happening.
How would you've answered 70 questions that aren't the
I
one
don't
I'm asking
understand
you.
what you want the answer to be.
What do you want him to say?
I
Dan?
am saying that you are Bill Belichick. You've just realized as Brian Flores is texting you back that you erroneously congratulated the wrong person, and he's asking you, did you mean to text Dayball? Are you answering it honestly the way Belichick did? Are you leaving it unanswered? Are you saying something else? What are you doing in that situation?
I mean, I'd probably throw my phone into a volcano.